Welcome back to the show. Our guest today is a real-life paid Hollywood writer, not just some rando in a coffee shop working on his magnum opus. You might know him from such games as Ratchet and Clank.
And he's also a creative consultant for Hasbro. We are excited to welcome TJ Fixman. Thanks for being here, man.
Thanks for having me.
So good. Okay, a lot of people out there, first of all, love video games. Many people love video games. Love Ratchet and Clank, and you've written Ratchet and Clank games. How many of them?
Oh God, you know I have to go to IMDb to be sure, but I think it's either 7 or 9. It's up there.
It's up there.
How great is it that Ratchet and Clank is back at the top of the charts again with an amazing installment? I mean, I think people that are playing this game weren't even alive when the first one came out.
I think so. I mean, I think the first one came out in 2002. So yeah. This one is a sort of reimagining of that first game. So it's very cool.
And it's phenomenal. I mean, I am loving it.
I just got my jetpack.
Oh, nice.
Just got my jetpack on Gaspar. And
they have a film, and there's a film.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Ratchet and Clank are big and back and ready to rock.
This weekend, the movie comes out. But I want to... A lot of people really wonder what it takes to be a video game writer, because I think that's sort of a job that has a lot of mystery surrounding it.
Yeah.
Because in early days of gaming, there was just sort of well, let's just have our producers kind of come up with something. We'll have some, our programmers come up with something. We'll just have sort of a basic thing, and then you ended up with, the end of Ghosts and Goblins, where it's just,
no one got to the end of Ghosts and Goblins.
That's true. Nobody ever did that. And now we are seeing very much so in the last 10 or 15 years of video games, we've seen really screenwriters, people who are actually invested in story structure, formatting, things like that coming into gaming. You got into video game writing kind of in a really weird way, and it's one of my favorite stories of starting in that industry. And can you tell our viewers, because I think they'll enjoy it as much as I did.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I came out to Los Angeles with a degree in computer animation and hopes of writing. And the degree in computer animation was very much my safety fallback, because I knew the odds of becoming a working writer
plan B.
are exactly. They're astronomical. So I ended up out here simultaneously writing and trying to develop a 3D animated show by myself, one person in the room, which is well, I say that because it's impossible.
That's a lot of work.
I'm not saying, well, look at me. I'm saying it's impossible to do. So after 2 years, I'd gotten almost nothing done, and I was working at Insomniac Games as a QA tester. And this was back in the Resistance Fall of Man days, back when the PS3 had just come out, and my contract was wrapping up. I had sort of finished the game, and I was ready to leave, and I didn't have any job lined up afterwards. I had an agent. I'd been taking meetings. I've been trying to get my scripts out, but nothing was hitting. So I was looking at my bank account. I had $250 left in my bank account. I had no backup plan.
I think a lot of people don't realize, as a QA tester, that in gaming, you don't stay at the company. Usually when you're done testing that particular game, you're on a contract, and when that game is done being tested, you are also done.
Yeah, it's a contract job, and you know that going in. And I'd finished the game, and it was very much time to say, okay, so long and thanks for all the fish. And
sure.
And I'm out. And I was packing up my desk, and I was unaware at the time, but the writer that was on Ratchet and Clank Tools Destruction at the time, for whatever reason, it wasn't working out between him and Insomniac, so they were going to part ways. But he had somehow read some of my scripts, and we'd talked in the halls before, but I didn't show him anything. I guess just the scripts started to get around in this town.
Oh wow!
And he's like, "I'm sorry that I didn't work out, but actually I read that guy's stuff, and it's really good."
These are film spec scripts you'd written.
These are spec scripts that I'd written, and apparently he'd read some of them, and he recommended me. So as I'm packing up my stuff, the HR director came up to me and asked if I would come back on Monday and interview for the job as a writer.
Wow.
So I spent that entire weekend unemployed, $250 out of my bank account, talking to my parents about how I'm going to be able to basically have to move home and figure out my next move back to New Jersey. And I couldn't even afford the move, so I wasn't even sure how I was going to
get back. Yeah.
And Monday I came and interviewed for it, and they gave me the job, and I think I started on Wednesday. So
that's incredible. And you've been a working writer ever since?
Yes, ever since. I'm not
That's
comfortable when I
amazing.
say that, but yes, ever since.
Amazing.
And I stayed in Insomniac for a good long time. I think it was 7 or 8 years, and then I moved on in 2013. And now I've been sort of contract, mostly doing feature work, but doing, of course, the Hasbro stuff as well.
So what is the difference between writing for interactive entertainment as opposed to writing for films and TV?
I mean, it's a totally different ball of wax, and it's super interesting. I always tell writers who are coming in, if you ever want to sort of see what you're made of, boot camp is video game writing is boot camp essentially.
Wow.
Because imagine hiring everybody at once, the director, the actors, the production team, without a script ready, and just saying everybody go.
Right, just start making
ready,
something.
set, go.
That writer will catch up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you're laying down the tracks basically as the train is coming through. Kind of
wow.
thing. So it teaches you to be agile. It teaches you not to be too precious, which is a big like it's tough for a lot of writers to get used to the idea that they don't just submit a script and it's just made. You know, like scripts are never finished. But I think it's more so in video games where nothing like you can write the perfect third act twist. This is the example I always use. You can write the perfect third act twist, and then a designer can come up to you and be like, "Buddy, I'm so sorry, we just cut that level. Can you just make it work?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure. I'll just write another scene." No, we don't have any more time for scenes. Just make it work. Just find some way of sort of tying it together.
Now, my question to you about that, because as a player, you feel that, right? And I wonder if you feel like games need to get to a place where that is more valued, like the narrative experience is more valued, and there's a shifting of priority as far as how video games are made.
Right, to say like, this is a great script, let's make it into a game. Like, this is a great game script, or great, you know, sort of synopsis or logline for a game. Like, let's make that.
I think nowadays there are studios that are getting more and more story conscious. Like if you look at Irrational with like Ken Levine and what he did with BioShock, if you look at what Amy Hennig did with the Uncharted series, there are more and more studios who are adopting that philosophy. But production is always against us. Like there's always going to be something, and this happens in features too, to a smaller degree, except that it starts with this is the story that we want to
starts
tell.
with the script.
But like with video games, it's always going to start with the tech. So if a video game studio finds that they can do 0G really well, guess what kind of game you're writing? You're writing a space game. It doesn't matter if you have a great zombie game sort of locked and loaded.
That's so interesting to me. That it's like, well, we developed this really great technology. Like, let's craft a game around it. And it's like you said, if it's a mechanic, something that we've developed, and it's like, man, we have to use this in a game. Like, let's make that work. Well, so interesting.
Look at Portal, though. Like Portal is the best example of that. Portal had one mechanic,
which
is this, and it was an amazing mechanic,
and built a
but they built this amazing story around it, where it was like all set in one location with like one,
one
antagonist
evil antagonist,
and it was amazing. So I feel like. It sounds, when you lay it out, it doesn't sound like the ideal way to work, but it's very much the way that the entire industry operates, into a smaller degree features. And you just learn to deal with it. And that's what you need to learn as a writer, regardless of whether or not you go into video games or movies, whatever. You have to learn not to be precious.
Well, it seems like your work with Hasbro is probably from the same vein, because you start with an IP, right? You start with a concept, and you have to build a world around that.
Exactly, and that's the thing that I love doing the most. Like when people ask me if I'm a writer, I always sort of say yes, I'm a writer, but I'm also a world builder, because there's something fun about not just building out like a 3-act story, but saying here's how the world works, here's how the characters interact with each other. That's really, really fun. So to get to go into Hasbro, who has all these amazing IP like Transformers and G.I. Joe and Micronauts, and get to sort of play around with that and figure out how it can all connect, like that's really cool. I feel kind of like Tom Hanks in Big, but instead of toys, it's game.
You
it's
get to
movies,
like tie them all together.
Yeah, it's cool, and they give me lots of toys, which is always a plus, and it's cool.
Now Mr. Zurkon is, I think, one of my favorite evil robots. I have many favorite evil robots.
Exactly.
Gladys. I've got Gladys.
You've got a theme. I
really do. I love evil robots. HK-47. I mean, I just really love them in gaming. And so Mr. Zurkon, also a favorite. But it can be really difficult. I remember we were talking about this the other day. It's really difficult to continue to come up with these one-liners, because he has to constantly have these quips in the game as you summon him, and it's like they can't be too repetitive.
Yeah.
So over the course of however many 7 to 9 Ratchet and Clank games, like how many lines of Mr. Zurkon would you say you've written?
Easily 500. Easily, and probably closer to 1,000. I'm just trying to think of what made it into the game.
Right.
And the funny thing with Mr. Zurkon was that when we first started him, he was just like a little bot that would sort of fly around you, and he didn't look like he did now. He looked what we call a consumer bot, just one of the bots that sort of fly around the levels that you could smack with your wrench. And I have to give credit to Brian Allgaier for this, because Brian Allgaier, my creative director, was like, something like, we can give personality to this thing. So let's give it a name. Let's call it Mr. Zurkon. We're going to overhaul its looks. And he goes, what would you do with it? And I was like, what if he just thought everything was stupid? What if he talked in third person and he trash talked, but it was just in the most obvious sort of Chuck Norris style ways.
Or Mr. T, like you said, Mr. Zurkon is bored.
Exactly. Or Mr. Zurkon doesn't need nanotech to survive. Like
Mr. Zurkon
he lives on the fear of others or something like that.
Mr. Zurkon will punch you in the face with bullets. There's some real zingers in it.
Yeah, he will give you a concerto of suffering. It's something like that. When you write it, it looks dumb, and when you record it, you're like, that sounds dumb. But somehow when you get in the game, you're like, that's actually,
it just works.
It works, and it's really funny, and it became this fan favorite ever since. So I take it as a source of great pride that it's become this big weapon in the game that I don't think they would do a Ratchet Clank game without one now. It's kind of like the groove it's right now. Like people
Yeah.
just expect it.
They associate it with the characters, yeah.
Yeah, because it adds personality.
So you came into the industry in such a roundabout way. What would you say is your advice to people who want to get in? Start in Q&A and then just hang around.
I just secretly drop scripts next to the writers' cards,
yeah, exactly.
just in hope that
Empty
they
your
pick
bank
them up.
account.
Yeah, well, I can tell you the thing that people do incorrectly is they go to school for and get like a degree in game writing, and they apply for and they look for game writing jobs. Game writing jobs really aren't advertised online. Maybe that'll change, and like I've seen a couple pop up here and there, but really that game studios will either hire from within, or they'll reach out to people who have representation, have an agent, or have done a lot of samples. But either way, the trick is to have lots of samples ready to get a degree or some sort of experience inside a game studio, or a computer animation degree, let's say, or like a design degree, because I think one of the reasons why game studios lean in towards producers or people who have game experience or animation experience is because they understand what the other departments are up to.
Right,
but when
they understand that process.
Yeah, and it's a very complicated process
Yeah.
with tons of different departments all working 60, 70-hour weeks to get this gaming. So like I think when people just sort of get a degree in writing and just expect to go in there and pitch a game idea, well that doesn't do anything for a game studio, because game studios are not in want of, like, they've got plenty of their ideas and they can find people who can write stuff, but what they need is somebody who understands the different departments. So if you've got a design degree, if you have even an art degree or an animation degree, you're going to be ahead of where just somebody with a writing background is. Like if I had just been a writer and didn't have the background in computer animation, I don't think I would have gotten a job, because while I was doing Resistance: Fall of Man, they needed somebody who from QA who could handle collision, or who could handle what they call nav meshing, which is sort of mapping out where enemies can walk. I think they've got programs that can do this automatically now, but back in the day, you had to have somebody sit in an office until like 4 a.m.
Make
actually.
it work.
Yeah, so like I think while I was doing that, I was sort of proving to the people who I worked with, like, okay, like he's not just a writer, but he also understands.
He gets it.
Yeah, he understands what the other departments are up against. So you're not just sort of coming down from your ivory tower saying, "Here is my script. Make it so."
Well, and also like there's an understanding of like when as you're writing, you can keep other departments in consideration. Where you say like, if I'm writing something like, how are they ever going to program this?
Yeah.
Like, this is not realistic. You can actually edit that down in a way that a writer not experienced in the games industry would not be able to do.
Absolutely, and that's since animation as well, because there's things that like I'm dealing with like on Popeye now, because I'm writing Popeye for Sony Animation, where if you know what's an intensive animation scene and what's not, the production team will love you for it. Like I know that I can't write all crowd scenes, because crowd scenes, big effect scenes,
really tough.
It's tough, it's expensive, it's time intensive, and it pisses animators off, and then they come for you with the torches.
Lots of one-on-ones in Popeye.
Exactly, and that's the thing. If you could write and just say, "Hey, reaction shot," while something happens off camera, it's like people will see like, okay, like you understand that. It can't just flow from your head.
It's being considerate. You're being considerate of the people you work with in a narrative way, which I think a lot of people don't grab onto that as much as I think they. Like you see things where people go, well, why didn't they just write a scene like this? Like, you see all these like armchair quarterbacks. And it's like they see armchair quarterbacks online. They go, well, they should have written this scene. And it's like, well, you have to consider all of the different departments that would have had to have contributed to that scene, and how expensive it would have been, and is that part of the budget, and is it this? And it's like, there's usually a good reason for why something didn't exist.
Oh yeah, I mean, like we live with these games for anywhere between 1 year and 3 years. So we've had many meetings about every single possible iteration of a scene that can possibly be.
Sure.
But like I remember seeing one comment where someone's like, "Why aren't Ratchet and Clank sequences more like Final Fantasy?" I'm like, because Final Fantasy will have a 500-person team, 10 years to make a game. Where like everything that was done at Insomniac was done in house, which is very rare. Like so yes, like there are certain things that we want to do, but it's always about picking your battles and saying, okay, like what is this story really about? Is there something that we're putting in just for the sake of flash, or is there something that we think we're saying
really matters? Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome, man.
Well,
I'm excited for a Popeye movie. I'll tell you that.
I am too.
Popeye's great.
I mean, I haven't seen it ever since the Robin Williams one. I've been like, when am I going to get an animated Popeye?
This one's fun.
Yeah.
I'm excited about that. Well, we'll wrap things up. We'll let you go. I'm sure you are a very busy man. I've been trying to get you on this show for like 2 months. And you're like, I have so many meetings. I'm sorry. I'm so busy. I can't.
We appreciate
but
it.
we're really excited. You can check out Ratchet & Clank the movie. It drops in theaters this weekend, which is cool. You wrote the first draft for that. And then also you can, of course, check out Ratchet Clank the game, which Jeff and I have been greatly enjoying. And it's really, really
fantastic.
fun. And if you've never met Mr. Zurkon, well, just let me tell you, you're in for a treat. And then you can follow TJ on Twitter.
That's
Right?
right, just at TJ Fixman.
At TJ Fixman. And thank you so much for coming on the
thanks
show.
for having
Really
me.
appreciate
Fun.
it. We'll be right back with an amazing package about drone racing that producer Logan put together. So stick around. It's Tomorrow Daily.